Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of This Full Life. I am continuing my talk from last week. Last week, I talked about beginning to recognize the areas in our life that we want to change. And when we want to make a change, we have to see the areas of our life first that aren't working in order for us to realize what we want to shift. So it's a great idea. What is working? What isn't working? And so we looked into why these areas weren't working and looked at the triggers and the areas that are underneath so that we could recognize why it is we wanted to make these changes. And so today we are going to dive into commitment to change, why we want to make these changes, what that commitment means, how committed are we, and self-sabotage and what that looks like when we are making changes, because I think that's something that we can all relate to, is the sabotage. So before we get started, I want to bring on my guest again, my returning guest, Delora Marchbank, bringing back her wisdom and her knowledge and her open mind, her new ways of thinking. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks, Sarah. Welcome to you too.
So when we commit to a change, when we all decide, okay, this area of my life isn't working for me, I need to fix this. A lot of times we make that decision, we make that realization, and then we think, okay, and we have no clue of what that even looks like to go forward, myself included, when I have wanted to make some really big changes, realizing, yeah, this is not even working anymore. I'm not even sure what that next step looks like, and how to dig underneath and figure out, well, why isn't this working anymore? Because that then can initiate that piece of change. Why isn't this working?
Right.
And also, and we'll touch on these three individually, but also recognizing that piece of self-sabotage that comes up when we do commit to, especially a really big change in our life, of all the chatter that goes on, all the monkey mind, the ego that wants to come in and go, you really need to do this, when it's contrary to what we've already said, hey, we're not doing this anymore. And one of the pieces, as I was writing some notes this morning, that came up for me was, so my husband and I were really committed a couple of months ago to paying off this piece of debt that we've had. We just, kind of pay on it. And we're like, okay, we are really committed to this much a month and just having this paid off within a few months. And so what I noticed for myself was, oh my God, I really need to have this. Other things that came into my life that I needed to pay for, or I needed to get, or I needed this new skin thing, or I just really need some new clothes. Like all these other things kept coming in, and I'm like, oh, but I'm not sabotaging. Like I really need these things.
Right.
And so it's recognizing how I was already trying to sabotage. Oh, well, we have committed to this.
Yeah.
I'm over here doing this.
Right.
Can you relate?
Totally. Absolutely. I think everyone can relate. I mean, whether, whatever kind of change we're interested in making in our life, whether big or small, systemic, or something that just, has to do with us. There are ways in which it's almost like we're pre-programmed to push against that change. And I think part of it is just our nature as human beings to want to stick with something that's familiar, even if it's not healthy. And then the other part of it, I think, is resistance to change. Again, that's just natural, because we crave a sense of like knowing. We're sort of control freaks, even though we don't realize that we are. And sticking with something that we know that's familiar and comfortable, instead of pushing ourselves into something that's uncomfortable, almost always wins out. But the good news is that we can do a lot of different things to help shift. Well, two things. We can do a lot of things behaviorally, mentally, intellectually, spiritually, to put support systems in place to help make sure that the changes that we want to make carry through. And then we can also cultivate a practice. It's very yogic in its underpinnings of being a witness to what's happening, not only in terms of like watching and then criticizing ourselves, because that's not so much what we're talking about, but watching compassionately, watching what we're doing in that way that you might, like walk through a room and just notice different things without bringing in all of the commentary and all of the history and drama from your past, from your upbringing, or from the challenges that you've been through in your life. So I feel like those two primary strategies are the best way to make sure that when you commit to a change, that you are going to be successful in implementing that change from start to finish.
I love that you brought the control piece in. I loved so many of your topics or of your points, but I am really learning to let go of control.
Yeah.
I am way more of a control freak than I even realized. And it's funny that everyone else saw it around me.
Yeah.
Except for me. And I thought, oh, I'm not really that much of a control person.
Right.
But we really are. And so that is such a key point when we want to make a change of letting go of that control, and the control being, this is what I do every day. This is what I eat every day. This is how I usually think. This is how I usually speak. And it's having everything tied neatly in that little box. So it's completely predictable.
Yeah.
And that we're not getting outside the box to grow or change or feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is that piece of control that we all like to maintain. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But I think that when we recognize that there is a need for a shift, and we are willingly, consciously making that shift, it is the letting go of control. It's letting go of that piece of comfort that we are so used to.
Yeah.
And being willing to see it in a different way.
Yes, totally. Totally.
I love also that you say and I don't remember your exact words, but the mindfulness of making that change and the willingness to be in that piece of uncomfortable space, and then having all of the tools as well all set up. So let's talk about some tools.
Okay.
First of all, just even being aware. So like for me, using the example of money, of thinking I needed to have something and I needed to have all these other things.
Yeah.
So just being open to the fact that you might be in denial, which I was. I was, excuse me, even in denial of my own sabotage.
Yeah.
But it's just checking yourself without demeaning yourself, without shaming yourself. And then, it was like a 24-hour period where I was like, yeah, I'm not even sabotaging myself. I really need to do this. It was allowing and opening that door of maybe I'm sabotaging myself. Okay. Then breaking it down. Do I really need these things? Okay. So if I take these things and I don't have the exact amount of money that we said we were going to put over here. So it's just allowing all that stuff to unfold and being okay with, this is what we said we're going to do.
Yeah.
And not jamming myself for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Letting go of that judgment. So there are two things that you're saying that come up for me around that. One is truthfulness. In a lot of wisdom traditions, truthfulness is something that is considered foundational for everything else. And when you think about why is that so? Why is that true? Why would that be the case? Without truthfulness, there isn't love. Without truthfulness, there isn't joy. Without truthfulness, there isn't trust. In some of those questions, the answer may feel more obvious than others. But I think for me, I think it has to do with being aligned with reality, like actual reality. Not being attached to our perception. So what I mean by that is, in a lot of tradition, like in Buddhist tradition, suffering is described as being at odds with what's actually happening, like denying that reality is what it is. And so if we can be truthful with ourselves, if we can see what's happening, but let go of the judgment piece, then it's easier to align with that truth. So in any challenge that we're facing, in any change we feel like we want to make, we first need to become truthful with ourselves. Like what you're saying, like what is the truth of the situation is, and also what is the actual goal, or what is the actual change, like what you were saying earlier about understanding a little bit about what's behind the need for that change, or what's behind the want for that change. So really becoming truthful with ourselves about what is the change that I want to make, and what is happening right now that is either contributing toward that change or pulling away from it. So, for example, if my change is wanting to be healthier in my body, or lose weight, or feel stronger, in my body, then every moment along the way, there are these things that come up. Okay, now today I'm feeling stressed. I really want to have that piece of cake, or I really want to have that extra donut, or I really want to, I'm craving a huge bowl of popcorn, whatever it is that, that we think that makes the stress go away.
Right.
So can we be honest with ourselves in those moments and say, okay, I see you, not temptation, I see you, thing that I'm used to going to when I feel stressed. I see you, and what that's telling me is that I feel stressed. Okay, I accept that as the truth right now. So then what am I going to do about it? Am I going to feed that and just fall into those similar patterns that are comfortable for me, or am I going to remember that my goal is this particular change that I want to make, feeling healthier in my body? So then in front of me, can I let go of the judgment? Can I pull myself out of that space of like, oh, you're going to regret it, and oh, you're too weak, you can't stick with anything, and like all of this commentary, like what you said. So in yoga, there's a term, chitta vritti, which means it's like the active thoughts or fluctuations of your mind. It's that constant, sometimes we think of it as that constant stream of chatter, which is why it's sometimes called monkey mind. So if you like imagine yourself in the middle of this beautiful forest, and all you can hear above you are the sounds of this like chattering, constant chatter. That's what it is. And the judgment and the commentary that we so easily go to when we are faced with a challenging situation, all of that comes right up to the surface. Mm. So for me, like the truth of the situation, okay, I am feeling stressed. That's the truth. So then what? Then it opens me up to possibility. Then it opens me up to recognizing that there are choices in front of me. And if I stay in that frame of mind of judgment and I can't remain neutral, then most likely I'm going to return to the habit that's familiar. Because again, when we're under stress, we go to what we know. It's very, very unusual that somebody would be faced with stress and be like, what is something I could do in this situation that I've never done before? And I have no idea how it's going to turn out. Like that's usually not how we go.
No.
So yeah, so this piece of truthfulness to me is really foundational, and it opens us up for possibilities, because then we can deal with what's really happening. We can align ourselves with reality instead of pretending that something is what it isn't.
And so I love your example of food, because I'll use myself again. So this weekend it was, and I'll use an example, and then I'll use some tools that I have learned as well.
Oh, good. Yay.
And so, because I think that's also something that we can all relate to is food and stress. And so, usually by Friday I'm pretty cooked. And so I really should have just laid down and taken a nap like around noon, but I didn't. I tried to push on, right? And I was so tired. So then my body was craving chocolate, because it's that sweet piece, right? So your body thinks, oh, if I can just get that piece of chocolate, it'll be energized. It's sugar, right?
Sweet and stimulation, right? Because it's the caffeine that's in it
caffeine.
too. That stimulation, yeah.
Yes. And so I thought, well, I'll just drink a little half a cup of coffee. Okay, so that super backfired. And I was even more tired.
Oh.
But it's the recognition of so probably a couple of years ago, I read a book that was talking about all the different food cravings and what they mean. If you're craving ice cream, then or dairy, like cheese or whatever, you're really craving that nurturing piece and that love. And so that just helped me to realize what it is that I was missing
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
craving. When you're
Yeah.
wanting like salty, crunchy chips, it's usually stress.
Mm.
And so when you're needing something like chocolate or something sweet like that, it's usually
Yeah.
because you're tired, right?
Yeah.
And so doesn't mean I don't still go for it. It just means that I recognize it. Like,
Yeah.
and sometimes I can definitely shift it and think, right. So it's the salty, I want salty chips or something salty, crunchy. Yep, I'm really stressed out. Or I want something creamy or whatever. I just need
Yeah.
nurturing. So most of the time I will figure out how I can get that nurturing, whether it's calling a friend or getting a hug or
Yeah.
so that is a very, for me, it's a really
Yeah.
good tool to recognize when I'm trying to make changes,
Yeah.
to go back to like, okay, what is it that I'm not getting? What is it that I need right now in this moment? Because I have all of these other cravings.
Mm-hmm.
Second piece of this for me is the willingness to sit in the discomfort without with also that urge of
Mm-hmm.
immediacy,
Mm-hmm.
because we are so conditioned to want to jump out of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
discomfort
Yeah.
and conditioned not to sit in that cringe.
Yuckiness. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, to sit in that yuckiness and to feel it in our body.
Mm.
And it is uncomfortable. We
Mm-hmm.
want to make a change and we want to go buy something. Like, I just need it. It's listening to
Mm-hmm.
that chatter and just sitting with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think I read something again, it's been a year or two, but like if you can sit with that shift or that monkey mind and that need, that urgent desire for like, I think it was like a minute and a half, if you can just sit with it, it will actually pass and shift into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a different thought comes in, but if you can just sit with that for a minute and a
Yeah.
half, then
Yeah.
see what comes up.
Right.
And so I've started doing this as well. And again, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's another tool when you are attempting to make that change of how you can just sit with the piece of uncomfortableness
Yeah.
versus wanting to just jump out of it.
Yeah. Totally.
Mm,
I can so
okay.
relate to that. And it's, like, yeah, so we've taught, you've sort of touched on the way that we need to face reality. And then the other layer of being able to sit with something that's uncomfortable, that puts us in discomfort. And then this other layer of like I guess recognizing what the options are from that point forward, like being able to see the menu a little more clearly, that maybe in the past, this is what I always chose off of the menu, but what happens if I choose this other one? And could I sit with that for a couple of minutes and just imagine it and visualize it? Again, like in our yoga practice and in any kind of meditation practice, these are also skills and abilities that we cultivate and that we grow over time. You're coming into a pose that feels challenging and you're breathing harder and your mind is going crazy because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's having me hold this for so long, or what, whatever. Exactly. So then how do you shift from that? What are the tools that you can use to shift from that into a place of receptivity and recognizing, just like what you said, like recognizing yourself as a spaciousness, instead of something that everything's hitting up against, recognizing yourself as a capacity.
Mm.
And that, just like you said, like if I recognize myself as a capacity and this thought that I'm having is distracting me or making me feel stressed, if I just can sit with it for a minute and let it move through, then maybe there's something else that starts to come through, something that feels more aligned with the change that I want to make, something that feels more aligned with my true self, something that feels more aligned with spirit, with divine. Yeah.
It's also recognizing the patterns. Like, what
Yeah.
are our go-to patterns
Yeah.
for when we try to make changes, for when our mind starts to get busy?
Yeah.
And so when you are on this path of change, it almost becomes funny to me of what all of my patterns are. And when we
Mm.
can laugh at them, thank God that helps,
Mhm.
because it almost becomes comical from the perspective of it's so predictable. Like,
Yeah.
we as human beings are so predictable in our
Yeah.
habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you're talking about being in yoga, yeah, when you will say get into a specific pose, and I'm thinking in my mind is thinking, oh my God, I can't do this pose right now. Like my
Right.
body just isn't ready for this right now. And
Right.
you just gently coax us through, and I'll just breathe and breathe into it and take that really deep breath. And then really my mind is shifting. I'm like, look at me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm full on in this pose right now.
Yeah.
And it's just that piece that actually carries on into the rest of your life of like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I can do this. It's like this wall that we put up
Yeah.
of all the reasons why we can't do it, why it's going to be uncomfortable, just blah, 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 blah. And as soon as we sit into it and just breathe,
Yeah.
it clears such a space
Mm-hmm.
for us to be in that place.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So I wonder if you want to explore a little bit more, so we were talking about like these are all great tools for in the moment. Then ahead of time though, there are structures and tools and systems that you can put in place, that anyone can put in place to help sustain and support the change that needs to happen. Some of it is environmental, but a lot of it I think comes back to this piece of self-knowledge, like really knowing what you need, um, so the first step in that, I suppose, would be again the witnessing, the watching, like watch yourself for a month, like keep track of um, what you notice about your energy levels throughout the day, what you notice about your energy levels throughout the week. Like you were saying, that by Friday you're toast. And there's a moment that probably comes up every single Friday for you when you're craving chocolate or something because like what I think you said before was that I know I should probably take a nap, but this
Right.
is the thing that happened instead, right? So,
Yeah.
and again, we can all relate. So, but knowing that you need that energy boost, knowing that you need that nap at that point. So then again, like how can that day be restructured
Mm-hmm.
so that it becomes something that sustains you as opposed to challenges you?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe before and I'm just using you as the example because you brought it
Yeah.
up. So, like before you get to that point where you feel like you need the nap, what is it that needed to happen prior to that that could have created a level of sustaining for you?
So what comes up as you ask
Yeah.
is, so because I'm in such a place of creativity right now
Mm-hmm.
and structure and creating the things that I'm creating, my days are really structured as well so that I am available for my family too. And
Mm.
so for me, what comes up is that not necessarily on Monday through Thursday can I like lessen anything because that's really a productive time.
Yeah.
But for me on Friday is to not schedule anything where I'm face to face with someone,
Mm-hmm.
is to schedule more yoga for myself
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
Friday, and a yen yoga, which really gets me soft and into my body,
Yeah. Yeah.
and schedule a nap. And if
Yeah.
I come to that place and I don't need that nap, well, then fine. But if it's
Right.
not in your schedule, it's not working.
Right. Exactly. So I
And
think you hit the nail on the head. Exactly.
yeah, thanks for asking because as you were talking, I'm like, okay, so how can I already make this different?
Yeah.
Yeah, I literally have to schedule in a nap for myself on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Thank
And
you.
so, and all of us have these rhythms, right? We all, now granted, not all of us have the luxury to create the ideal schedule in any given week that would be, quote unquote, perfect for us.
Right.
Kids, we have spouses, we have commitments at work, we have things that we just love to do, but I think the more we can get honest with ourselves about what sustainability really looks like in the micro and in the macro, so like on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis even, and then even starting to pay attention to the bigger cycles in our life,
Mm.
especially for creatives. There are times when, like thinking about the cycle of breathing, there are times that we inhale and there are times that we exhale. There are times when for anyone, whether you feel like you're a creative person or not, there are times when your energetic systems are ripe for productivity. So you
Mhm.
feel like you have got creative ideas coming out of your ears, and you have lots of energy for getting things done, and everything feels really effortless and you feel like you're getting enough sleep and you're the way we say that sometimes is you're in the zone, right? Like you're in
Right.
the zone. And then there are periods of time when there might be none of that. And in fact, I feel like I need to take a nap every day all of a sudden. And what's tricky is that we come upon those times in our lives or times in a week or times that, again, whether the cycles are short cycles or long ones, when the commentary starts to play again. Why don't I have any energy? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just get anything done? I really don't feel like getting anything done. Why is my laziness taking over? Like all of these words and images and beliefs that come up from deep within our core because they're things that we've been challenged by when we were very young. Been given this messaging, and we are still working through it. So again, if we can clear some of that chatter and really hear and feel who we are and recognize that with every inhalation, there's also an exhalation. Otherwise, you die at some point, right? Like you can't have just the one. So for every period of time when we're productive and creative and, like we feel like we're in the flow, we're in the zone, there's also a period of time of replenishing and filling the bucket and doing things that nourish us. And, so as an artist, I might be productive, for the first 3 months out of the year. And then maybe I need a month of not doing anything, not painting, not doing photography, not writing, to just experience life. That's that exhalation or the inhalation, however you want to think about it, a complement of the productivity. So, like really just remembering for ourselves that we are designed to go through cycles, even in a given day. The fact that we live on a planet where there is light and dark is very interesting to me, because what would our lives look like if we lived somewhere like close to one of the poles, like closer to the North Pole, where you have that sort of like endless daylight, for months out of the year? What would we do with that if we had sun all the time? No, we live in an environment where there are these natural rhythms and cycles built in. So how do we begin to recognize how those map on for ourselves?
And so as you're saying this, I'm also recognizing when we do make changes, we also get to hone in on, when we talked about what's working and not working and really committing to make a change, we're getting rid of the clutter as well.
Yeah.
Like we're cleaning out the closet of what's not working and throwing everything else out. So it is doing fine tuning to support that change. And it's also, so for me, I've really upped my game on self-care because I really am focused. And so there might be something that we need to bring in that supports this change. So if we are really making big changes and even little changes in our life, all changes are great, but we have to be able to support those changes as well. So for me, it looks like more self-care. And it's almost contradictory that the more I want to work, the more I take care of myself, because I'm almost taking the time away, right?
Right.
But it's like you just said, you might work for the first 3 months and then take a month off. It is refilling and recharging and re-inspiring for you to just be and just to live. And the next month when you come back, you're super recharged. There's all of these ideas to then use in your creative outlets. And so I feel like for me, that is something when I am making big changes as well, I commit even more to making sure that I'm getting a massage, that I'm doing acupuncture, chiropractic, whatever that looks like for us.
Right.
Again, seems counterproductive, but it really isn't, because the more I take care of me, the more productive I am.
Right. So in terms of sustaining and supporting that change over time, like recognizing for ourselves the things that we need to refill, to replenish, so that we're not just giving out, because in making a change, there's a huge energy expenditure, usually. We are shifting a reality for ourselves, whether it's in the way that we spend our time, or in the habits that we engage, or the people we spend time with, or what have you. when we're making a change, there's a big energy expenditure. And so if we haven't built into the process of making that change, those moments when we are replenishing and nourishing ourselves, whatever that looks like, we're less likely to follow through completely to the point that we imagine for ourselves.
I am so glad you brought that up, because if we're making a change, so we're either making a change of adding something or subtracting. And when we make that change of taking something out of our life, we have to put something else back in. Otherwise, exactly, we will not be willing to sustain that change because we haven't rewarded ourselves or put something else fun or good or nurturing back into that space.
Right.
And so I remember when I was really making a lot of personal changes, like really big life changes about 10 years ago. And a lot of my friends kind of fell away because we not necessarily had a fallout. It was just that we weren't on that same path anymore. And so I was noticing that I was feeling kind of isolated because, even though my friends were kind of falling away and I just didn't feel compelled to call them anymore, or just thinking, we're just kind of not on the same wavelength anymore, I realized I got to find some new friends because kind of doing this on my own. And so at the time I wasn't aware of, okay, these people are falling away. Let me figure out how to bring some new people in or go search people out. But it is that ebb and flow of letting go and then allowing something else to come in, or looking for that and kind of not making it happen, but making sure that we have something to fill up in that good, positive way. What it is that we're taking away.
Right. Exactly. I think what a lot of people are recognizing these days, especially when it comes to something like a diet or a new workout regimen, is that exact thing. Like the diets of the past that were all about cut this out, cut that out, cut that out. It's not sustainable because eventually your mind is going to feel like it's missing something. Because it is.
Right.
And so instead, a lot more, what I've noticed about a lot of diets these days is that there's a lot more of like, don't think so much about the things you're not supposed to be having, and instead focus on filling up whatever it is you're eating from your bowl, like with these things. So focus on adding more of these things, and then you don't notice as much that those other things aren't part of the picture anymore. And it's a much more clever approach because I think it matches
it's kind of
better with our psychology.
Right? It's kind of like a mind trick.
It's totally like a mind trick.
Whatever we need to do to make that change.
Right.
And so I think these are awesome tools that we have talked about because I think they're completely applicable to any area of our life that we want to make that change. So it's getting really clear about the changes that we want to make, why we want to make these changes. What's that underlying piece that's causing us to create this change? What's not working that we want to create this change? Being really mindful, being able to sit with the discomfort. I love the breathing. Of just breathing into that space, literally breathing. Not just sitting, like you literally breathe consciously into that space of the change and remind yourself. Something that we didn't cover is having a running buddy.
Absolutely.
Like having a partner, especially if you're going to diet and exercise, having a running buddy to call and say, holy cow, I'm ready to eat the entire thing of ice cream. I'm ready to eat the whole bag of chips. Can we just chat?
Right, exactly. I mean, this is where I think a lot of recovery groups, the way that the groups are modeled is very wise because it relies on having a sponsor, having somebody who has a little more experience than you do, who can be there for you to talk things through, to help provide that support when you feel like you need it. And we all need that support at some point. Other words that I've heard for the same dynamic is accompaniment. Like I love that idea of being accompanied by somebody, because it implies that social connection as well, where there's something fun and social and connective about it. And then it's also like there's this image I always get of, yeah, like I'm doing something to help you be successful. I'm doing something over here to help accompany you, to make you sound better, or to make you, to help you to move toward the change that you want to make. And so I love that idea as well, like of having somebody to accompany you
I
along
do
the
too. It sounds fun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And so I wanted to also tie this into globally
Mm,
of making changes
mm,
worldwide and on a really big scale of sitting and watching
mm,
also of what is going on the planet, what is going on in the world
yeah,
that maybe we don't agree with, that maybe we
yeah,
think should go a different direction. Sit with it.
yeah,
Sit with why it's uncomfortable without already wanting to, point fingers and judge and figure out all the reasons why,
yeah,
but sitting with the place of change of what's happening in the world versus immediately jumping on a bandwagon.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's being in that breathing space as well.
yeah. Sitting with it, and I think also recognizing where your passion lies with it. So of all the huge things that need to be changed, where do you feel the strongest pull? Where do you feel the strongest alignment? And maybe putting effort toward that, as opposed to getting distracted or feeling like your energy is dissipated among 5 different things or 6 different things. um, and that's not to say limit yourself to one, but maybe start with one
Right.
and see how things shift and move there, where you can have influence, where you can have impact, and then
Yeah, I have
move on.
a girlfriend in Santa Barbara who this is a great example, and I love that you said that because she living on the coast, there's so many different things that you can do to clean up the ocean, clean up the planet, and so you can get into 10 things on one weekend at any given
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
She chose her piece to be straws
Hmm.
because living right on the ocean, all these straws are continually washing up on the beach. And
Yeah,
so she started to petition in Santa Barbara to stop using straws in restaurants, like bring your own straw. And
yeah.
so I think she's like up to 20, maybe 20 different restaurants who
Wow.
are offering, like you can buy the straws there from them, like the reusable
Yeah.
straws, but they are committed to no longer serving straws and they've got signs all over the place. And so, yeah, she realized I really want to make a big change, but like I'm so spread out. How can I really focus and make a big change that I want to? And it's so awesome to see now that she's figured out one piece,
Yeah.
the change that she's making. And she
Yeah.
loves it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. We all have some sphere of influence, whether it's
Hmm.
just in our home or in our neighborhood or in our community or in our city or state. We all have a sphere of influence where we can contribute to the change that we want to see in the bigger picture.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me again today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was awesome. I knew that you and I could really have a great jam session about creating change and how to be successful
Mm-hmm.
at creating this change.
Totally.
Mm. Thank you,
Thanks.
my friend.
Thank you.